This is Deep Blue, where we get the true life stories of BYU athletes, coaches, and fans. Here's your host, Jarom Jordan.
Today's guest is one of my best friends. I hang out with him more than my family at times. He's one of the nicest people I know. He's an amazing person and an incredible broadcaster. He is a man I asked Michael Miner to pursue in 2013 because I knew he'd help BYUtv Sports a ton. He's my partner in crime weekdays on BYU Sports Nation. He is Spencer Linton!
That's the greatest introduction I've ever received.
No, really?
It's going to be hard to beat that, especially the volume and the excitement at the end of that.
I'm just so stoked to have you here. I've always wanted to do a radio show with you. So here we are. This is Deep Blue, and typically you and I are talking about other people, but this is a time that we get to talk about you, which is exciting. So I feel like I know you really well. I'm going to learn things about you I didn't know, so I'm stoked. But the audience, I don't think necessarily knows your journey. Maybe they follow you on social media. Maybe they've seen things, but this is going to be fun. So let's start with some softballs, and then we'll get to some heavier topics, certainly, about your life. How'd you get to BYUtv, Spence?
Wow. Let's rewind to early 2013. I had a thought based on a Facebook post I saw from you, Jarom Jordan, and the news that you and your wife, Whitney, were expecting your first child, and thought, man, it's been a while since I caught up with Jarom. I should call him. And I was sitting in the parking lot at the Cantera Apartments where I lived in Palm Desert, California, across the street from the JW Marriott Desert Springs. I'll never forget it. And had a few moments before I had to drive back to KESQ, the desert's news leader.
Oh, of course.
ABC and Fox stations there, and do my weeknight sportscast, and thought, this is a good time. And just finished up dinner and spending some time with my wife, Brittany. And we had one child. He was Jax. And
he still is Jax, right?
He's still Jax, in truth. And I think he was a little over one at the time. And so I thought, I need to get the down low on Jarom's family situation. So,
and we had talked here and there since we graduated from BYU, which we'll get into, and had interactions and even a show together. But this was a sort of reconnection. In fact, West Coast Conference basketball tournament, you came and covered someone from the Inland Empire, and we hung out, and that was really fun.
Yeah.
It was great to connect again. And so this was just kind of a reconnection. Every couple months, maybe we'd communicate.
You bet.
Yeah.
You bet.
Yeah.
And so, I thought, what better time? Let's do it now. And gave you a call and kind of updated you on my life of what was happening in my professional career. And, I made it very clear that my contract in Palm Springs was going to be up in the summer. So 4 or 5 months from that point.
This was the spring, right?
Yeah, because I think it was almost spring. I want to say it was like January or February of 2013.
I was in my office. I remember where it was.
Yeah. And so, I mean, in California, at that point, it was prime time in the desert. So it probably wasn't great weather in Utah, but it was 75 degrees,
Why'd you leave again?
Sometimes I ask myself that. No, I kid. But gave you a call and kind of just told you, hey, they want to renew my contract in Palm Springs. I'm thinking about pursuing a job at Fox 5 in San Diego.
With Ron Burgundy, that would have been a huge opportunity.
Right? Taking over for Champ Kind.
Whammy!
Whammy! So, I mean, there were opportunities out there, and a station in Indiana was very interested. But so I just kind of said, hey, I could stay here in Palm Springs, but I may as well. Is there anything at BYUtv that you know about? And you paused for a second, and you said, I think there might be. And I was totally taken by surprise. I was not expecting you to answer that way, because I just thought, it's kind of hard to get in there, and, who knows what they're doing over there. It's BYU's independent. They got some shifting things. They've got Dave McCann and Blaine Fowler, and, of course, you're here, Jarom, and Robbie Bullow's doing his thing. But you said, I think we might have something. And I just, in that moment, I was like, oh, man, okay, maybe the door's open. Maybe this is my road back to BYUtv. And that just got the wheels turned. I got really excited that night.
In that moment, I felt like you were going to work here. I didn't realize I would feel that way. I don't know what that feeling is or means or where it's from, because so much can happen, right? But in that moment, I knew you would be here. I didn't feel like, hey, we're going to have a show together for 8 years. I didn't feel that. I just felt like, oh, you're going to work here, which would be really fun. And we'll get into our background, which precedes this. But in that was a big moment. It was a really big moment.
Sure. And there are a lot of obstacles to get over. And so you informed me at that point that there was a play-by-play opportunity opening up and that it wasn't a full-time position, a three-quarter-time position at the time, but Robbie Bullo, who his name we already mentioned, said that he wanted to pursue other ventures. And our senior coordinating producer, Michael Miner, at that time was just beginning to look for another person.
So I'm like, I know a guy.
To fill that spot. Yeah. So you go to bat for me, and I basically tell you, hey, just put my name in front of Michael Miner. I'll fly myself up to interview with him. Just give me a chance. And so this comes to fruition. We're talking in February, maybe a month later. It was March, late March 2013. I fly up from Palm Springs and get to BYU Broadcasting, connect with you. You welcome me into the building, and then I meet Michael Miner for the first time, and we go into conference room 2 and have a 45-minute or hour-long conversation just about everything that I do, my background, and what he's looking to accomplish by filling this position at BYUtv. And tells me right now it's three-quarter time. It's doing play-by-play broadcasting for most of the Olympic sports we have at BYU.
So that's no salary, no benefits, by the way,
right,
on three-quarter.
An
opportunity, but still, it's like, oh.
Man.
You got an opportunity in San Diego, Indiana.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, mind you, my wife is teaching school in Southern California.
And teachers make bank.
Yeah.
We wish.
They do make an okay wage in California. Thankfully, that's one good thing that California does. They actually kind of pay their teachers.
We found the thing besides the weather.
Right?
And Disneyland location.
Yes. And she had benefits, obviously, and they were fantastic. And then I had a full-time job at KESQ and full-time benefits there as well. So we're coming from dual income, one kid, plenty of benefits, nice location. And now I'm seriously considering leaving all of that and trying to convince Brittany that we need to move to Utah for a three-quarter time position, which I hope develops into something bigger at BYU.
It didn't, and you didn't come to BYU. Thanks for joining us.
It's been a great conversation. But I felt so strongly that I needed to pursue this opportunity because I always wanted to make the transition to live sports from doing sports for a news station. I just wasn't sure how I was going to do that. And this obviously seemed like the avenue to get into that. And I thought, if I don't strike now, when am I ever going to have another opportunity to not be just a television news sports guy and do play-by-play? And that's why I just feel like I was so willing to risk things. And then my wife says, well, I don't want to work anymore. So if we move, wherever your next job is, whether you renew here in Palm Springs, like I think I'm done teaching. I just want to be at home with kids and be a mom. And I thought, oh, man. Okay.
Three-quarter sounds wonderful.
Wow.
Right?
So I expressed my concerns to Michael Miner and say, I want you to know I'm willing and ready, and I feel like I'm totally capable of doing anything you put in front of me and performing that at a high enough level that I feel like I could add to your team. But is there anything we do about benefits or compensation, things like that? And so, BYU's a tricky place that way.
Yeah, he slid you $100K under the table and said, we got you.
But basically he told me, I appreciate everything that you've told me. Let me see what I can do, and I'll get back to you. And so then it's always tough because this is the waiting game. You know, days, weeks go by. And then I get a call from him. It's probably been, probably 6 or 7 weeks. I get a call from him, and he says, hey, I want to fly you up for Media Day in 2013. What he didn't tell me was it was like my tryout. He just said, we'd like to put you on the air and have you go to work for us as an independent contractor over Media Day. I said, okay. So I flew up and met with you
I was informed that you were going to be on BYU Football Top 50 Plays.
As the fan perspective.
I was like, awesome. I know Spencer. This is great.
Okay.
Yeah, throw him in.
So put me into Top 50 Plays, doing web chats on Media Day, and preceding that, I think we had a True Blue episode where we previewed the season, and I did a package. And here I am. I'm working on. I'm told that I have an editor, and I've got all these resources, and I've been working as a one-man band.
Welcome to the big leagues.
So I was like, wait, I have people helping me? So you just need me to like write a script and voice it?
That quickly went away after you were hired, but yes.
And so we did this, and everyone was really nice, and thankfully they were, complimentary of what I was doing. And I just felt like home immediately. And so had a great experience over those 4 days. Didn't want to leave. I was like, can I just stay here and go to work? I don't want to go back and finish my contract in the heat of the desert. But that was what was required, and got back. And then Michael said, hey, we really like what you did. We'd like to offer you the 3/4 time position officially. Are you going to take it? And I said, I got to talk to my wife.
Are you going to take it in that moment?
Oh, man. I remember,
like, can I think about it?
My wife was at our community pool, because that's how you survive in 115 degrees, and had Jax there, and my mother-in-law was there as well. And I remember thinking, how am I going to shape this so that she's like, yeah, let's do this? And there was no easy way into it. It's like, okay, I just feel really strongly that this is going to develop into something that we need. Like, we need to do this. And I know it's a risk right now, but what do you think? Here are the figures, here are the numbers. They'll try and compensate me because I'm not getting some benefits to try and make it a little bit more palatable. Can we do this? And all she said was, I don't want to work. You figure it out. If you're 3/4 time, I don't care what else you have to do on the side, but I just don't want to work. And then we can go to Utah. And so I was really excited, but then I was like, oh, man, what am I going to do?
Some stress there.
Yeah, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
But we packed up the moving van in late July and headed to Utah, arrived, and I'm not kidding you, 10 days before I arrived in Utah, Michael had floated out the idea, hey, how would you feel about hosting a radio show that airs on BYU radio every weekday? And my vision is that we would take this to TV at some point as well. How would you feel about being one of the hosts? And I was like, oh, yeah, absolutely. I would love to do that. And he said, no, well, obviously, if you do that, you would have to go full time. And then I was like, yes, where do I sign? Mm-hmm. Please, whatever. If it's the most horrible thing, if it takes me full-time status, let's do this. He's like, well, it's not a guarantee, but I just wanted to kind of gauge your interest. So I said, yes, I want to do that. We move up August 1st, and he says, Kay, we want you to be one of the hosts for the radio show. Now I got to talk to the people that hold the positions of power at BYU, and we got to make like an official job description for you as the first ever full-time talent at BYU Broadcasting. Like, you won't do any producing. You'll just be talent. We don't have a position like that here. So it's going to take a little bit of time. And I was like, all right, cool. Yeah. Crazily, it only took like 10 days. On August 10th, he called me and said, congratulations, you're full-time. You're one of our hosts of our show that's yet to be named. I just got to find you a co-host. We need a title of the show. We need a producer. But you're going to be involved and you're full-time. So just prepare for that. And I just
many wins, yeah.
I was feeling so grateful. And I remember calling my dad, Kent, and my mom, Christine, and just saying, I can't believe this has happened. Like, I just knew. And again, it's one of those feelings. Like you said, you knew you were going to work with me. I knew I needed to be here. I don't know where the genesis of that feeling was, but it's just overwhelming. Like, you need to do this. You need to take the risk. You need to be there. This is where your career needs to go. Your family needs to be in Utah. You got to go back. And so that I felt validated. It's like, oh man, the risk was worth it. We're back and I'm full time. But really, that was just where the journey was beginning. I mean, we and I had no idea what this was going to evolve into as of August 10th, 2013. It's pretty crazy.
3 weeks later, BYU Sports Nation happens. Let's go there. So there were other hosts selected that didn't work out for various reasons, politically, ecclesiastically, and otherwise. You and I, this falls into our laps. It really does. And I was deeper on the depth chart than you. It was like, okay, who's the host, who's the co-host? We didn't really carve out the co-host part until later, by the way. It was just like two people. So you and I are talking in the hallway, and we just have great chemistry. We just talk, we go back. Again, I keep teasing it. We'll dive into it in a second. But we did a high school sports show together called Sports Valley, where we covered Provo and Timpview high schools while we were BYU students together. You were 2 graduating classes ahead of me, but we called games and did a show every week that we didn't realize was the precursor to BYU Sports Nation in terms of talking about what's going on, interviewing athletes. We don't cover highlights like SportsCenter style on BYU Sports Nation, but we learned the craft in that moment. I was also working at BYUtv. You were working at the MTC teaching Korean, but we were getting into this. And then you go to Grand Junction. You actually asked me if I wanted to come join you there. And I actually told you no, which is hilarious. Because I was pretty comfortable here calling
Best
games.
decision you ever made, saying no.
Probably. I've said no a lot in my life. And then you end up coming back around. And Michael Miner sees us talking in the hallway, and all of a sudden, boom, we're on BYU Sports Nation. And so that was the career move of career moves, the break people talk about in this business. That was the break from me, was you coming elevated me where I could be on BYU Sports Nation. Then all of a sudden, we're on the radio, which it's fun to be back to the roots with this show and doing radio as well for 6 months. And then we were on TV, and we've been on TV for 8 years now, which is crazy. That fall, you say August 2013, literally August 10th, you said, 3 weeks later on Labor Day, we're recapping in our first show ever, BYU Virginia. And we're off, man. It was insane. And so it was like really validating when I referenced that moment. You said, I need to be here. You need to take this, and hey, we're going to work together. I didn't realize we were going to have a show together.
No.
That might literally, like when I retire, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be defined by BYU Sports Nation in my career. That was a big moment. That was a big deal that you came here, that we could do this together.
We're approaching a decade of doing the show, which just blows my mind.
It's crazy.
It blows my mind.
I'm shocked they still like it.
We're over 2,000 episodes in. 2,000 episodes. And I was trying to do the math the other day. I'm like, man, how many hours of preparation and just how many hours of TV in general? So if we're like over 2,000 hours, how many days does that equate to? And I'm like, I have spent so much of my life working in this building and being on live TV and radio, specifically reporting on BYU news. Like
what a tough gig we have.
And people are like, oh, you're
awesome.
living the dream job. You're right. We are experiencing the dream job in a lot of ways for a lot of people, and we do not take it for granted. It sometimes when you grow outside of work, meaning like you have more kids, more responsibilities. This could be religious responsibilities, callings, side gigs, family, things change. Like that sometimes can kind of shadow in things, but it doesn't take me long to kind of take a step back and be like, it's pretty stinking awesome that I get to go to BYU Broadcasting almost every weekday and just discuss BYU sports and the relationships that I have with the coaches and players and our relationship, our friendship. All of that reminds me that, yeah, this is a dream scenario. People ask me all the time, where are you going to go after this? What are you going to do next? It's like, do I have to go anywhere else?
Do I have to?
Do I
go
have
somewhere?
to leave
Yeah.
to go somewhere else?
Where am I going? Why are you pushing me?
Like what should I be aspiring to?
Yeah.
You tell me. What should I be aspiring to next? Because right now this feels like it's pretty darn good. And it's not like we're here and we're trying to plateau. We're constantly trying to build the product.
I'm trying to get worse. I feel like we peaked. I feel like we're on the downslope.
Like that is the challenge, is like, how do we evolve and stay ahead of the game? But having a daily show has been a game changer for BYU Broadcasting. We're the only daily live show 5 days a week, certainly on TV. I know that there are some daily shows that happen on the radio side.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But the TV side was a game changer. And so we're kind of like that news outlet. And going back to something you said about you credit me for helping elevate you. Oh, I needed you to get back to BYU. And so there's this symbiotic relationship where we help each other and have lifted each other to the positions that we are in now and continue to aspire to within the ranks of BYU broadcasting. But it's just such a unique situation. And the word blessing gets used way too much, so I try and stay away from that. But I do feel like this was a blessing. And whether you buy into that, the cosmos and religion and all that stuff, like
here we do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like it was a hand-delivered golden platter blessing to have this window open, this opportunity to take the risk, and then to watch what it's become. It's just been unbelievable in a lot of ways.
I also feel, in addition to BYU Sports Nation, like your brother in arms, because obviously we're covering BYU football and basketball and everything. There have been times where we actually cover the same teams together in ways. So you call more, play-by-play games than anybody on the planet overall of BYU athletics, okay? Because you do, let's talk about it in order. And I used to do this so I can appreciate it, 08 to 11. And then Robbie Bullough did it, and now you did it. You do it. Women's soccer, women's volleyball, women's basketball, gymnastics, baseball, and softball. You also sideline football pre-post coverage, men's basketball games and pre-post coverage. And I feel like your brother in arms in that way, because if you can't do play-by-play on a game, I fill in.
Yes.
And if I can't do play-by-play in a game, you fill in. Men's volleyball, you've done this. So we're calling the other sports. Now, the other sports get left out in the convo quite a bit. But I feel like you and I, and many others, but you and I get the opportunity to be the primary broadcasters for these amazing Olympic sports. And we cover the ones that we don't do games for on BYU Sports Nation. So in terms of the whole athletic department, it's just we're not the voice of the Cougars, Greg or Bell, but we're a different voice in the conversation of the other sports. And I really enjoy the storytelling we get to do, not only on the show, but in the games. Because honestly, I don't know if I've ever said this out loud in a recording, I like games more than I do studio shows. Because games are in the moment.
It's the true reality television.
Yes, I love the studio shows as well. Don't get me wrong. It's sort of the dust settles. You get to speak and talk about what's going on. But, man, in the moment in a game, really special.
And I look at these opportunities that we have with the Olympic sports specifically, and I reference several conversations that I have with people when I travel across the country who obviously are there to watch the big money sports, football and basketball, and, pay the money to go and watch the Cougars play in Knoxville, Tennessee, or in Murfreesboro, or Virginia, or Washington, D.C., or wherever. They're all over the place. But they so often mention, I had no idea how much BYU athletics as a whole accomplishes, and I wouldn't have cared about women's soccer or volleyball or baseball or softball or gymnastics or women's basketball or track and field the way that I do if it weren't for BYU Sports Nation. And so while we understand that on the show, most people care most strongly about football and basketball, there is an opportunity and there is this interest in the high-level performing Olympic sports and the athletes and their stories, and everybody's got a story, right? And we have been able to tell some incredible stories with athletes that are in less prominent sports that have been brought to the forefront because they have a unique path and a unique story. And I really like the opportunity to do that, whether it's, on BYU Sports Nation or telling their stories and showing their talents within the actual live broadcasts. There's no place like this. There really isn't.
We're talking with Spencer Linton, sometimes called Spencer Linton, on BYU Sports Nation here on Deep Blue today. Okay, when did you want to be a broadcaster? How old were you?
Oh man, all of these moments are very still. I don't want to call them surreal, but I remember the details. I was on a field trip to KSL TV and radio, Channel 5.
Which, by the way, you work at KSL TV as well, which is pretty gnarly and awesome. Living that dream, too.
So I went down there for a Quarters for Christmas field trip, which is a program that, the local NBC station and the radio people at KSL, they do to raise money for kids to have shoes and gifts over Christmas that are in less fortunate circumstances. And I was a member of my 4th grade student council at Clinton Elementary, the Cougars, by the way, and their school colors were blue. So,
perfect.
Okay, I've been associated
with
blue and Cougars. Yes, Linton from Clinton. And we got to come down and tour the studios. And we got to say our names on the radio. And I remember my dad telling me the night before, now enunciate your name really clearly.
Linton.
Yeah, no, don't say Linton. Say the T. You're Spencer Linton. We literally practiced it. And I was like, oh, this is so stupid and annoying. Whatever. I'll say it right. And so, yeah, we got to literally, we were in a line in front of this microphone. They take us through the studio. And they're like, hey, we got the student council from Clinton Elementary here, and they're here to help raise money for Quarters for Christmas. All right, guys, who we got here? Say your names. So said my name, and I was like, that was amazing. I just said my name on live radio. And then they continued the tour, and they took us into the television studio. And this is at the time when, because there was no internet and there just wasn't as much connection, obviously, the news was a huge deal. I watched the news every night with my dad. I still can't believe my parents let me stay up until 10:30, by the way. I'm like, what? I'm putting my kids in bed at 8:30. I bet they're up past 9. I'm like, oh, it's late.
What the heck?
They might watch the news every night with my dad in elementary school because I wanted to watch the sports. And Craig Bolerjack, the sportscaster, and Karl Malone and John Stockton were in their heydays with the Utah Jazz. And it just, this is
back when they'd get past the second round.
Right? Yes. That hurts.
Too soon.
It
right.
hurts.
I'm sorry.
But I just got to sit on his chair. I didn't even meet Craig that day. I just got to sit in his chair. He was on assignment somewhere doing something, I think for a bowl game for BYU or something. But I just sat in his chair on that old KSL set with that, with the cityscape backdrop that would be laughed at now. But it was iconic for me, and thought, this is amazing. I'm here. These are the TV cameras. This is where he sits and does his thing and does the sportscast. And I just got so excited and thought, I think I want to do this. Went home, told my mom and dad, I got to sit in Craig Bolerjack's chair, and I think I want to be a sportscaster when I grow up. And to their credit, they were always encouraging of that. They saw the spark. They saw the energy that I had. And not many kids, when they're 9 or 10 years old, are like, yeah, this is what I'm going to do. But
they say it,
right,
but it doesn't always happen, which is fine.
I just set the goal. I set the path.
Yeah.
I was like, that's what I'm going to do. I want to do that. And I think I had the wherewithal to know that I was not going to be a professional athlete at a pretty young age. I liked athletics, and I played a ton of sports, but I was like, there's probably a good chance I'm not going to be John Stockton. So what's the next best thing? It's talking about it and getting paid to talk about it, hanging out with all the famous athletes. And I wanted that. And so that's kind of where the dream began.
What's the best? Well, I know the answer to this, I think, but who or what has been the best kind of interview situation or broadcast experience you've had? Let's start with interviews. I think I know the answer, but I want to hear your answer. Because when you were in Palm Springs, you covered some really the highest level of tennis and golf specifically.
Yes. Yeah, it's going to be tough to beat the experiences I had in the Coachella Valley in the desert in California because of those rare opportunities. And I had the chance in 2012 to go to PGA West, and this was like a super secretive thing. Because I did my due diligence and had covered events and was all over the place, often as a one-man band, I had developed a nice rapport with the management at PGA West, which manages 9 courses, and they play a yearly PGA event there. And Mike Kelly was the general manager, and he called me up and said, "Hey, what are you doing tomorrow morning?" I said, nothing specifically.
Mornings or nights for you?
Yeah, right.
when you work in
right?
the news.
Yeah, well, nothing, hanging out until I go in for my shift. He's like, hey, bring a cameraman and yourself and show up at the front gate to the Nicholas and Palmer private courses at like 11:30.
Say those names again.
Jack Nicklaus, Arnold Palmer.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay. So courses they had designed, the two legends of golf. I thought, okay, cool. It's great. Can you tell me what's wrong? He's like, I just do not miss this. Just show up at 11:30, have a cameraman, and trust me, it's going to be worth your time. I said, okay. So we are on our way down there, and I have a buddy that's like, hey, my grandma lives on the Palmer private course, and she just got wind that there may be some golf royalty in town. And I was like, what? So I was like, are we going to meet somebody super famous? Are we going to meet Arnold Palmer or Jack Nicklaus? We get there, and both of them are on the property. Jack Nicklaus and Arnold Palmer at the same time celebrating something called Ernie's Day. And their friend Ernie was a big instrumental part of developing the game and course design and all that stuff. He had passed away. They were back there celebrating Ernie's Day by playing on their own signature courses at PGA West with a limited gallery. Maybe 100 total people knew about this. So there are 50 people with the Nicklaus party and 50 people with the Arnold Palmer party watching these legends in the sport play their own signature courses. And I'm the only media member there with my cameraman. And they're like, hey, who do you want to talk to first? You want to talk to Arnold Palmer? I was like, yeah, that would be great. So we go over and frame it up, and I'm having an interview with Arnold Palmer. I just I can't believe this is happening. And I talked to him probably for 10 or 12 minutes before he tees off. Super gentleman, just incredibly kind and really funny. Just had a great wit and a sense of humor about him. And then we watched him play 5 or 6 holes, and he was playing with a high school kid that was a star in the area and 2 other people that were lucky enough to win whatever lottery they won to get to play with Arnold Palmer. And so it was just fun to watch it. And then it was okay, well, now let's go over to the Jack Nicklaus side. All right, great. Go over, and there is the Golden Bear, the man who has won more major championships than any other golfer, even Tiger Woods. He's got 18 major championships, and he's just driving around in his custom golf cart, and he's playing the Nicklaus private course. And we do an interview with him. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how does it get better than this? I've interviewed both of these legends of golf, and we follow the Nicklaus group for the back 9 of his 18, and then we come back to the clubhouse, and then Mike Kelly, the general manager, says to me, hey, do you want to do another interview? And I was like, well, whatever. I mean, yeah, we've got lots of great stuff, but yeah, I'm not going to say no. He said, well, what if you interview them together? Okay. So
yeah,
Jack and Arnold Palmer are standing next to each other while I interview them in this tandem setup. And my first question to them is, how often do you two have an opportunity to meet up like this as friends and play golf? And Jack Nicklaus says, well, we meet every year at the par 3 course at Augusta Masters, and then we meet the next year at the par 3 course at Augusta, and then we meet the next year. Once a year. They never do this. So I was like, okay, this is super unique. And they just were so gracious. They cracked some jokes. We had some fun. I turned it into this massive special that we aired on our station in a couple of different formats. And then Jack, after the interview was over, said, hey, why don't you hop in the middle of us and take a picture? So
you're like, fine. If you make me.
There's this goofy kid from Clinton, Utah, in between these 2 legends. What
was it like to peak in that moment
right?
in your life?
I thought to myself, when is it going to get better than this in terms of just inclusion and an interview? And
it won't.
I've got my arms around these guys, and Jack's patting me on the back, and Arnold's thanking me for being there and doing the interview, and we're taking the picture, and I'm just smiling, just cheesing like a goofball.
Like more than your picture with Ben Rector.
Yes, more. Bigger smile on my face than the one with.
I was like, you were excited.
One of my music, heroes, Ben Rector. Take the picture, and I just had to pinch myself all the way back to the station. I was like, I can't believe that just happened. Like that was the craziest few hours that I've ever spent in broadcasting.
I'm like proud for you. I think I've even bragged about you in that moment. I was like, that's pretty cool, man. Listen, covering BYU athletics is pretty awesome.
Yes.
That moment's pretty special.
Yeah, I mean, we get to talk to a lot of really cool people. Jim
Yes.
McMahon, Steve Young, Ty Detmer, all the legends of BYU football. Danny Ainge. I mean, you talked to Danny Ainge earlier this year. And Rick Pitino for crying out loud during the BYU basketball preview. That is amazing.
But like Arnie and Jack, sorry.
Crazy.
That's the top of the mountain.
Sure.
It really is.
Interviewing Rafa Nadal at center court after he won the BNP Paribas Open was another crazy moment. Like, just so gracious, champion.
Indian Wells, man. BYU tennis plays there a bunch.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Some really cool interviews for sure.
Okay, tell me about your family dynamic. So how many kids are there in your family, and how did that shape you? And then let's talk about your dad.
Okay, so I come from a family of 7 children. My parents, Kent and Christine, they battled and journeyed, and they moved all over the Wasatch Front in Utah. I'm thinking about just the places that I can remember they lived. They lived in Benyon, a part of Salt Lake City, and then they moved to Logan, and then to Bountiful, and then to Clearfield, and then to Clinton, just in my lifetime, if not just before that. So they were all over the Wasatch Front. But I'm number 6 of 7. Got 4 older sisters, Lisa, Laurie, Liz, and Lindsay. And then I have an older brother that's nestled in between a couple of the sisters, Trevor, and then me, and then a younger brother, Tanner. So there are 7, almost 8 full years between Tanner and myself. So I was the baby for almost 8 years. That's a gap, man. That was a surprise for sure. But yeah, very loving family, incredible parents. I'm kind of a little bit of a black sheep in that, like, my family's extremely musical. And a few of my siblings went to college on music scholarships, and my dad was in one of the top 40 barbershop quartets in the country and wrote music. In fact, he turned down at one point Olivia Newton-John, who heard one of his songs and she wanted it, and he was like, nah, I'm saving it for a movie. So I'm like, Dad, what were you thinking?
Did it make a movie?
It never got made into a movie.
Oh.
In fact, we always joke that we're still going to figure out a way to make his movie. But he did produce the soundtrack for it, and just some really, really solid songs. My dad had a talent for writing music, and that was passed on to many of my siblings who, now Ross, my little brother, is a musical genius. He's got perfect pitch. He can play a bunch of instruments. He's awesome. But I'm just like the sports guy, right? So I love music. I love to listen to music. I like to sing.
You like to dance.
I do like to dance on occasion, for better or worse. But
what do people need to YouTube for the NSYNC music video from high school?
Oh, boy. Yeah.
You don't have to say. I'll tweet that out later.
Music has been a big part of my family's life, and has kind of shaped how we do things and what matters to us. But I chose the sports route, and I like going to concerts with you. And
we've been to a few.
Doing stuff like that. And
what
21 Pilots.
21 Pilots.
We've been
Smashing
to
Pumpkins.
Jimmy Eat World.
Guster.
Yes.
We've been to at least those 4.
Yeah,
right?
solid.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah, music's a big deal. But I guess I started into my own family life when I married my wife, Brittany. Met her in Las Vegas. She happened to be going to BYU, but we met down in the desert. I was visiting my sister, and we got married in 2005. And unbelievably, I've been married for 16 years now. We have 4 kids. They sound
old.
I know. They range in ages from 9 to almost 6 months. Jax is my oldest boy. He's 9. And I have a boy named Jet. He's 5. And a little girl named Sailor. She's 3. And then a little girl named Navy, and she's 6 months.
Little girl named COVID?
Yeah.
COVID baby!
A COVID baby.
COVID baby.
We survived it.
Yeah. You sound super old, but you're not. I don't know how you feel, but I still feel like I'm at BYU as a student, minus the student part, the class part. I enjoy interacting with our students, being on campus, feeling that youthful energy. We've been told by our producer, Ben Bagley, to not ever tell our ages. We're going to say our ages here, okay?
Yes.
I'm 37.
And I'm 39.
But we feel like we're 27 and probably 29 or something.
In fact, I had...
until I pay my bills and I go home.
So I had one of our good friends who we covered for what felt like forever, at least 5 years, Micah Simon, former BYU receiver.
Micah Simmons.
Okay,
man.
He's now with the Carolina Panthers, trying to make a 53-man roster out in Carolina. Recently, I was in Charlotte on a very quick trip and had an opportunity to eat dinner with he and Brady Christensen, who was drafted by the Panthers. And he didn't know how old I was. And
how old did he think you were?
We're talking. And so I just said, you guys guess. So I had Brady and Micah guess my age. And Brady's like, I don't know, 30. And Micah's like, yeah, say something that's like 29 or 30. I'm like,
this is a blessing.
I'm 39. Micah was like, what? You're 39?
What are we doing at dinner with you here? This is so weird.
I'm having dinner with an old man. I know. I know.
Do you know where the newspaper is? Do you still want to watch the news at night?
Thankfully,
because you work for KSL.
Thankfully, I'm not there. I feel like I'm in this weird middle ground.
Middle-aged. Jamal Williams called us two vanilla middle-aged men.
Yeah, my middle-aged vanilla man.
I think that's the perfect description of who we are.
Yeah, that's totally fair.
Yeah. Okay, you talked about your family. Let's talk about your dad. Your dad has had a massive influence on your life. And you received some bad news a few years ago where suddenly he had cancer.
Yeah.
How did this affect you at the time? And tell people about the influence he's had on your life and the story around when he did pass away and where you were and what went down.
Sure. So Kent Randall Linton has always been a guy who is just the supreme optimist. And, so when I found out that he had prostate cancer in, I want to say this was December of 2016, I almost didn't believe it. I was like, okay, no, it couldn't happen to him. There's no way. He might have it, but if he has it, it can't be that bad. It almost felt fake. I was in denial. Total denial stage. It's because I could still talk to him and call him on the phone, and he seemed to be in good spirits, and he's like, yeah, a little uncomfortable here and there, but I'm doing okay. What I didn't understand was he was masking a lot of things. It was very uncomfortable for him, and it really had impacted him because the cancer they caught it too late. It was already stage 4. And so it had already spread to the surrounding tissues of the prostate and what they feared the most, into his bones. And once it gets that far along, it's a steep hill to climb to get out of it. But he did such a good job of masking that stuff that I was like, oh, he's fine. He's my dad. He's my hero. We're gonna beat it. We're gonna overcome this thing. It's gonna be okay. And what was really frustrating to learn was that he had been experiencing symptoms for a number of years, but they had just not been able to pinpoint it when he was living in Florida and finishing out his professional career working at Cape Canaveral for an independent contractor for NASA. They were far away from us, but he'd been going through a lot of these pretty significant symptoms, and the doctors in Florida just said, oh, it's okay. It's normal male issues. He's got an enlarged prostate. We see this all the time. We're pretty sure he had cancer for 6 or 7 years.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. So my mom's really frustrated because they didn't catch it in time. And it's hard not to wonder, well, what if? What if he'd gone to the right doctor, the right oncologist, and they had located this, would he still be with us? And that's a hard game to play because, you just feel like you could have changed some things. What if we just done this? But it does no good. So when we realized that it was stage 4 and we were to a scenario where it's like, okay, well, I hated to ask the question. I was like, well, what kind of timeline are we dealing with? And the doctors had said, well, it could be anywhere from, 10 months, a year, 14 months, maybe a couple of years if things go well. We'll see. And then if he responds to treatments, then maybe that time gets longer.
That's sobering news.
Right. It's like, whoa. So just totally sets you back. And then it's like, well, I want to make sure that we create memories and we do some things. And so I just sat down with my parents one night in early 2017 and said, let's make a bucket list. I know this is weird to do this, but what do you want to do? What kind of things do you want to experience? And, listening to them list off things, it was clear that family was everything. I just want to spend time with my kids. I want to go to my favorite places, Bear Lake, Idaho. I want to, tour some temples for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints that have been newly built in Star Valley, Wyoming. And I'd like to go on a train trip. But all this stuff was centered around family. I thought, okay, let's make it happen. And my parents, to their credit, they did a good job of masking how difficult they had things in life. For whatever reason, my dad is as accomplished as he was and as talented as he was, had a hard time holding on to consistent employment for a lot of his adult life. And so just job to job to job. That's why we moved so much. And so we were very, very humble means for my family. We didn't have a lot of money. And so, thinking about wanting to do all these things, it was going to cost a lot of money. And so I opened up a GoFundMe and was just like, hey, this is a situation. My dad's my hero. My mom's my hero. I love them. My dad's got cancer. It's pretty far progressed, but we want to make sure that he gets to experience some things that he matters or he cares about that matter to him most. And people were incredible, and just in a matter of days, we had raised all this money to go and do this stuff. And that was super touching. But even then, while we're doing these things, I keep thinking, he's not really dying, is he? He's not really dying. He looks okay. And then you kind of start to see his health decline a little bit. He loses some weight. He loses some color in his face. He's not able to be as active as you want him to be because it's like, hey, let's go play golf. He's like, I can't do that. My bones hurt, and I might do something, and it's like, then it starts to set in. But BYU athletics and you were incredible. BYU football team, they honored him as a true blue hero. They brought him in. They made him feel important. And, that's one of my favorite things that I have from my dad is that story. Whenever I'm missing him a lot, I can search his name and search that story and go back and, I can hear his voice and I can listen to him and see his smile and, see him shed a few tears as he's talking about his life and just hear about his faith and his, he had just this incredible faith that things were always going to be okay. No matter how hard things got in life, it would be a good experience for him to work through. He would learn a lesson from it, and then he would advance on. And he wasn't scared to die. And I was more scared for him to die, and I think all of us as siblings and my mom were more scared for him to die than he was. And that was just a real testament to who he is as a person. But yeah, that's a lot. I know there's a lot of emotion involved there, but that's kind of the mindset that I was going through at first was denial. And then you start to see it set in, but just to see the community rally around him and the people that he impacted and what he meant to them, that was pretty incredible.
The day is September 29th, 2016. It's the day before BYU at Toledo. You had said goodbye to your dad. He passes away that day. And then you're on the road at Toledo doing a hit on BYU Sports Nation at the very end of the show. We talked to you about BYU Toledo, but then we take a moment and talk about your dad, Ken. Why did you feel like you still needed to be on the air and do your job? I've never asked you this question.
I was talking to my mom about this just a few weeks ago, and I felt like I needed to clarify it with her. Because I think some of my siblings were like, what are you doing? Where are you going? Because I got the call that week on a Monday and went down, and immediately, my mom said, I had a great Sunday with your dad. We had a fun conversation, a good dinner, and then he woke up Monday morning and he was just mostly unresponsive. Like he just was tired and he's having a hard time formulating sentences, and I'm being told that he's transitioning. And I thought, no. Again, denial. No way. And so my wife, Brittany's like, you need to get up to your house. Go stay with your mom. And so got up there, had a brief conversation with him, cracked a few jokes just to kind of make him smile. And, he told me he loved me. And then we talked a little bit more on Tuesday, but then it got to the point where it's pain management and he's being medicated so heavily that he's really not with it. And that was tough because all of my siblings are coming in and they each had their moment to kind of say goodbye to him, but before he got so heavily medicated that he's just out of it until essentially he passes away. And so it was tough because he didn't want to be medicated, it was uncomfortable and he just wasn't himself. And, you don't want to picture your parent like that in their last days. So I think that might have played into it a little bit for me was I don't know that I want my last images of my father to be this. And so that kind of got it. And I was like, and I know I have responsibilities with BYU football, but had I opted to stay, it would have been fine. Like we would have figured it out at
totally
your parents passing away. It's you work around it. But I wanted people to know my dad. And I wanted to utilize that platform to explain to people how much he meant to me and my family. And he was not a guy that was given a lot of notoriety because of his humble scenarios and, didn't come from a family with a ton of money. I felt like I wanted to tell his story. And so I was like, I want to go because if this happens, then I've got a microphone to explain to people what he means to me and my family. And it's important that my dad receive, in my mind, what I felt was be the proper recognition for who he was and what he did. Because it's so often, we're in the spotlight, you and I, we're in front of a microphone, in front of a camera, we're talking, we get to tell our stories and things. But he was the guy, along with my mom, that was sacrificing things that he wanted all of the time so that I could have the cool kid pair of basketball shoes when I was in 5th grade. They are purposely avoiding spending any money on themselves so that they can scrimp together enough just so that I can have a nice pair of basketball shoes. And they're the people that are putting me through my mission to South Korea, and he's unemployed for 22 months while I'm on my mission and not telling me about it because he doesn't want me to worry about it. Those are the types of things that my parents were doing and finding ways to still supplement me while I'm out and about and doing things, and always the constant support and the people that, that believed in me and my dream. So I felt like it was important that people know how much of an influence and how much of a VIP he was to me and to the world, albeit he was under the radar most of the time. And it was incredible to see the people that showed up at his viewing and his funeral with the little interactions that he had, how much of an impact he had on them. And that was probably, it's always sad. I mean, just it's an awful thing to lose a family member, but when you see the impact they had on people, that is a tender mercy, So I'm glad you asked that question because, like I said, it did come up with my mom, but I wanted to utilize that opportunity to let people know how special and unique he was.
That's some powerful stuff, and Kent was always super nice. I really like Kent. I like you, therefore I like Kent. But then I got to know Kent, and I was like, oh, maybe that's why I like Spencer, because Kent is such an awesome dude. And yeah, that True Blue Hero was really special, and we aired that day after we did the hit with you on the show, and so it was an emotional day. It really was. And but I remember Eric Mateos, the offensive line coach for BYU, saying, "Look at Spencer out, still doing his job and like honoring his dad in this way." And that was a really powerful post about kind of what you chose to do in that moment. So I don't know how we're going to transition out of that because that's really emotional. But what or who, and your dad certainly is a part of this, has made you who you are today? That's at the heart of this show. Because I see who you are, but who or what has made you what you are today?
Yeah, obviously a lot of that goes to the upbringing of a family and just how you're raised and who you're around. But I think not just my parents, but I think all of my siblings who have been around me have kind of shaped me into the person that I am, because I can draw upon specific scenarios from my older brother, Trevor. I mean, I
love Trevor, by the way.
He
great.
Put the competitive spirit into me, and it was not always fun. It's not always fun when he's, because this is what older brothers do, telling me that he knows where I sleep and that, he knows what I care most about. And if I take one wrong step, he's going to take my bike, or, he's going to, yeah, you love older brothers. But he really helped me develop a love for sport and competing and working hard and training. He was the kid that would wake me up at 6:00 in the morning to go work out at the rec center with him because he wanted me to be a good basketball player. He wanted me to be able to, experience playing on the varsity basketball team. He's the one driving me to tournaments, things like that. So, and I look at my sisters, each and every one of them, has very different, unique, I don't want to call it skill set, but just like attributes. Lisa is my oldest sister, and she's a classic oldest sibling. Get it done, responsible, like everything's in order. And she's dependable as can be. My sister Laurie, her kindness, which is, I feel is directly pulled from the kindness of my dad and my mom. One of my greatest bits of advice I got from my dad was just be kind to people. Just be kind.
You're like kind to a fault. Like, you're so nice. You're like the nicest person I know. Seriously.
Well, that comes from my dad and Laurie. And then I look at my sister Liz, who was she loved to be out and about, socialized, social butterfly, talking to everyone and the center of attention. And there's a portion of that in me. I already talked about Trevor and my sister Lindsay, who is one of the most selfless people I know. Like, I draw not only from my parents in that regard, but there's this innate desire to want to help people that don't have as much as I do because of the examples that have been set before me. And then looking at my younger brother Tanner and just seeing how humble he is with all of his musical talent. And so I draw from my entire family. I feel like pieces of my parents and my siblings are all kind of ingrained in me. And now I'm seeing that start to happen with my wife, Brittany, who is she has the most integrity and honesty of any person that I know. Like, sometimes I wish she could lie to me. Like, hey, hon, how do I look? Not great. Like, no, tell me that I look great. Like, she will tell me. She just cares so much about being truthful and honest and forthright and having integrity. And now that is something that, I'm aspiring to and pulling from. And I don't know. I'm really enjoying the whole family aspect of all this. But yeah, that's a great question. And one that I probably haven't spent enough time thinking about of why I am who I am and why I'm shaped. And, faith and religion and all of that stuff factor into that as well. But I was put on that path by the example of my dad and my mom. Like it's always been about forgiveness and kindness, and understand that you don't have a full picture of what everybody's going through. So just give people the benefit of the doubt and be kind. Be kind.
I think that's a great way to end this. I really do. Be Kind, Rewind. I think that was a movie, right? With Jack Black.
Yeah.
Well, Spencer, we could seriously spend hours, but here we are with a limited amount of time. Obviously, people can catch you on BYUtv, on BYU Sports Nation, KSL TV, locally in Salt Lake City as well, and, of course, watching BYU sporting events. So this was really fun. I felt like I got to know you even better, so this was totally worth it, at least for me. Hopefully it was for the audience as well. Thanks for taking a few minutes.
You bet. Great to be with you. And my apologies for rambling on about my family, but that's what this show is about, right?
No apologies. The podcast is the longer form of this. If you're listening on BYU Radio, you get the full version. Spence, thanks, man.
I appreciate you.
That'll do it for us. You can watch these Deep Blue stories on the BYUtv app, listen to previous episodes of the radio show on the BYU Radio app as well. For Spencer Linton, producer Trent Reimschussel, I'm Jarom Jordan. We'll be back every Saturday with more compelling Deep Blue stories right here on BYU Radio.